Okay, I think we're ready to begin.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming, Shoring Council. Today, we're going to go over a few of the projects we're working on. Well, first off, introductions. My name is Ron Camp from Atlas Sales Company in Honolulu. We do scaffolding and shoring. Mitch Meadows.
Yeah, Mitch Meadows. I'm the co-chair for the council. I work for DH Charles Engineering. We do shoring as well and access scaffold. So as just a quick recap, the purpose of this council is to promote and represent the shoring industry. So we want to be the organization that develops safety guidelines and standards. So in order for us to do that, though, we really need the input of all of you guys. If we want to push this industry forward, we really have to have the support and backing of all of you guys, which is why we're here today.
Well, we're trying to get the extra people from outside in. All right, so carry-ons. Lost control.
Can we go back?
Yeah, the IT guy is in the back there. He's got it.
So just a quick update from last year, based on our council, we went through the shoring safety checklist. And so in that meeting, we decided to split it up into both a designer and an installer section. And so we've actually completed that this year and posted it online. You can find it under the Shoring Council tab in the resources. And it's under the inspection. So whether you're the designer or the actual inspector, you can go or get this sheet and you can run through various projects. So that was the main thing that we completed this last year. We also went through the shoring design guide table of contents with all of you who joined us. So over this last year, Ron and I have been developing the shoring design guide draft, which we actually sent out a couple months ago. Thank you for everyone who actually responded. It was incredibly helpful. But what we're realizing is that there's just so much information there, and it's such a large project that we really need to get more volunteers and more of you guys actually involved in order for us to accomplish this project. And we'll jump into that a little bit more. And then after that, we'll get into what Ron's been working on, which is the fall protection for shoring. Uh-oh.
Lost control.
Am I doing something wrong here?
Next slide, please.
Next slide. Go back. There is some. Aha. So just taking a step back, right? Why are we all here in this council today? Why are we taking on shoring projects in the first place? And so I actually reached out to a bunch of guys throughout the industry across the US and asked them, why do you guys take on shoring projects? You know, what is the allure, draw to actually doing them? And I actually got a common theme from a lot of them. And so we'll run through some of the answers I got. So inherently, shoring is a high risk project, right? We have real loads and it's often critical to the safety or the safe completion of a project. And so talking with some of the guys, you know, naturally, if you have a higher risk, you typically, you know, have a higher reward. And many of them actually have a higher rate in which they charge on their bids or their projects when it comes to do to shoring. New challenges, right? There's all kinds of projects out there. There's all different kinds of ways you guys can use your equipment. And a lot of the guys says it's fun. You know, when there's new challenges, you know, it keeps work interesting. Several of the guys even mentioned that, you know, you can do a lot of prep work with shoring. You can get the guys in the yard to actually set the screw jacks, preset post shores. So the guys actually out in the field can go and set up the shoring towers quicker, and they actually dismantle quicker, and they're able to make more profit on these jobs. You know, ingenuity and resourcefulness. You know, there's a lot of different ways that you guys can use the current equipment that you have to solve these problems or take on these projects. And just naturally, there's a higher reward in doing those types of projects. And then maximizing equipment usage. If you're going out and attacking shoring projects and access scaffold projects, there's just a wide variety of projects in which you can use your equipment on. Naturally, if you get more equipment is out, you're making more money. So a lot of the guys mentioned that in theirs. And honestly, several of these resonate with me. Maybe there's some various ones that you guys, resonate with you, or maybe you guys have different reasons. Again, the goal of this council is to get everyone to collaborate, and we love to hear reasons why you guys take on shoring projects as well. So that being said, what do we want to accomplish with this shoring design guide? So the final product, we would like it to be a resource for everyone in the industry, someone who's just getting into the shoring industry or someone who's been in it for 50 years. We want, to have best practices, common questions, right? If you're about to bid a project, are there things that we need to look out for? We also want to develop industry standards. We want, if everyone's collaborating on this document, we can have a document that points like, this is our standard for an industry, right? For our industry. And it helps move us forward and allows us to be safer on the projects that we're working on. And then finally, we want it to be a design guide for, shoring designers or engineers. If there's questions, factors of safety, various design processes, we want it to be a reference for them as well. And then how can we achieve this? We honestly, again, we need the input from you guys, right? Ron and I, we're just a small percentage of the industry, right? But all of you and your collective knowledge, we can really put together something that could be very useful for the industry. We also need your backing, right? If you guys don't back this document, it really isn't worth the man hours that it's going to take to actually put everything together. But if you do back it, if we have reviewers, or if we have various projects, we can point to this document as a reference. And it could be a great guide for people to review, and it'll actually hold some weight if we all back it and support it. And then shared knowledge, right? Like the meeting this morning, the reason we're all together is we want to get together with like-minded people and push our industry forward, right? We want to make a difference and make it safer and make it better. And so Ron and I were discussing how can we actually, get this project completed. And we only have so many man hours, right, that we can put into it. And what we're envisioning is getting you guys, right, a group of people together that's, a larger committee that can review this document, put your input on it, and vote on what should be in it, what shouldn't be in it. And then from that group, we can have smaller subcommittees to take on specific topics. I put together a rough draft this last year, and it's just a starting point. It has a ton of different topics in it, but we don't even have to stick with that format, but it would be a great place to start, right? We can look at the various subcategories, and depending on how many volunteers we have, we can have, if there's only a couple volunteers, maybe we take on like one topic a year, right? But if we have a lot, we can get a lot done. We need volunteers to actually complete this project. So I'm actually going to just jump into some of the topics that were in the design guide. Hopefully, maybe this will spur on some interest with you guys, and maybe you want to, join along. But just quick show of hands, how many people do not want to be a part of this?
All right.
Yeah, this is awesome, guys. Sweet. I'm glad you guys are devoted to this.
All volunteers. That was great.
Nice. So the first topic was slab and beam support. So, this is basically support of concrete, steel, timber, masonry, any structure or structural framing that needs to be picked up to allow for the completion of the project. This could be, slab demos, installation of new steel beams, concrete floors. But if there's an existing structural framing member or a new framing member that needs to be picked up, it'll fall under this category. And there's so many different topics that we can even jump into, like what are the best methods, right? How do you guys install bracing, beam stacks, all kinds of stuff we can actually jump into. But they're all great questions, especially if some of you guys don't actually do this kind of work. It could be a great resource for you to figure out, hey, I want to start doing these projects. Where do I start? We have needle beam or wall shoring. This is basically the support of various construction or wall construction types, right? This occurs usually when someone needs to cut a new hole in a wall or an existing foundation is being undermined, or if they're just completely removing large portions of the wall. There's various topics in here that, I'm not even 100% familiar with, like those of you who do take on the projects. Do you Do you actually self-perform the holes in the wall, or do you guys subcontract that out? All of these topics can be included, even to, again, back to beam stacks, not loading the inside leg versus equally loading the tower. Again, just another good topic that we could jump into as a subcommittee. Truss shoring is another good topic. We typically see these in warehouses, but they're all over the place, right? Topics that we can jump into would be, where do we pick up these trusses? Do we pick it up at the bottom chord panel point, the top chord panel point, right? How do you guys typically approach, going out to these job sites, figuring out how tall these projects are, what type of equipment is standard for you guys, depending on maybe what type of part of the country you're in. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to stop me as well. We can talk about any of these. But so equipment and vehicle support platforms. There's so much that goes even into this subcategory of shoring. Depending on how you bid the project, it really matters on what needs to be picked up. Are we going to have material that's laid out over the top of this platform uniformly distributed? Are we going to have heavy point loads from a tire or from, a pallet jack? Or is there going to be line loads from, a track type piece of equipment? All of these stuff are incredibly important when you actually go to bid the project and affect how you approach the design of the actual shoring system. And so, we can jump into, various topics as a committee. We can talk about how you guys approach these types of projects. Again, I only approach it from a design perspective, but there's, you guys who are out there in the field every day, you have a whole different perspective on these types of projects. And then there's column shoring. I really just included the slide because it's just cool seeing the column float in the middle of the air. No, I'm just kidding. So with column shoring, it really happens when an existing column either is undermined or a portion of it needs to be removed, or for whatever reason, the structural integrity of the column is being compromised due to the type of work that's being performed. And a portion of it and the floors above need to remain intact. And so, projects like this, where you could support hundreds of thousands of pounds of load. There's various topics that are incredibly important, like how much room do they need at the base to perform their work and complete their work? As far as shoring projects go, these ones can be very complex, but it's great to see if you guys have approached these projects in the past. How have you done them? What are things that you've encountered? What are problems? What are, successes that you've had? There's wall bracing, right? Bracing of walls for stability, whether that's wind, seismic, soil loads. And honestly, with these types of projects, I don't work on them a ton. And I know that some of you guys, do this day in and day out, and others maybe have never seen this. But this document could be great for, setting out foundations on what to look out for. So if you guys go out and want to take on some wall bracing jobs, we can talk about equipment, where you can find the equipment, what items to look out for, what kind of loading. Yeah, just great topics to include in this. Or if there's any other topics that you guys feel would be pertinent to the shoring design guide, Ron and I are open. This is just an idea that we want to better the industry. And then I just put a miscellaneous category in there. There's so many different types of shoring projects that don't even fall into these categories. If we know what needs to be picked up, we know what loads, we can typically design something to support it. And a lot of times it can be supported with your guys' equipment that you already have in the field. So as this document develops, we can add in, cool projects, best practices for miscellaneous projects that you guys have worked on in the past, just to even share knowledge between one another. But yeah, other topics that I'm hoping to get into would be engineering. Hopefully the engineering community, you guys here, where we can all collaborate, come up with, factors of safety, different engineering requirements, maybe cooperate with the A11 council or committee, and whatever they develop with equipment or testing, we can get this included in the document as well. Any further development, any cool ideas. And someone actually in the comments from when they responded to my initial rough draft said, hey, I don't see any Canadian standards in here. And honestly, it's because I'm not very familiar with any Canadian standards. So if any of you guys are, this could be something that we could also add in. But yeah, you guys have any questions before we get into Ron's part of the scope?
raise of hands, how many people in here actually do slab fly form shoring and, you know, heavy construction or high rise forming? One person? Two? Okay. We kind of left that out. Basically, we're looking at some of the really odd type shoring jobs that come up. And if you want us to include that, we can start including that. But we thought that was pretty well handled by several different guides like the SP4 and the ACI. So we wanted to concentrate more on these specialty type projects. Would you want us to cover any of that standard shoring with like the table, platform table type shoring or anything? Or is this appropriate for what we're doing?
Again, the goal would be to have a one-stop shop, right? So maybe even include a section like that at the end. A lot of these documents provide best practices, right? We still have to be, careful about all of the information that we include. We don't want to, give a step-by-step design process because that should be up to the individual company and the designer. But we would like to provide some type of guidance for each one of these topics or various topics that you guys find interesting. Yeah, like documents like the SP4, they do a great job talking about, fly forms, stuff like that. But there's so many categories that are left out. I mean, I know in the past, Waco has documents that have various, informal stuff, the SSFI. We can include information from that as well. But the goal would be to have one potential document that us as an industry does support and does stand behind. So.
Any questions? All right.
So maybe I can talk to some of you guys afterwards, get your business cards if there wasn't a sign-in sheet. So I would like to send a follow-up email and just kind of what we talked about here, and maybe some of you would want to message me privately if you guys don't want to speak up now about being interested in any of this as well. So.
Jackie, do you have the names of all our volunteers here? Okay. All right. Perfect. So we'll just send out an email blast and we'll just ask who can contribute. All right.
Just take a picture so you know who's in the room.
Yeah.
Not all of us are in the room, Mr. Palladino.
What was that? Okay, so the shoring design guide, no questions. We'll move on to shoring fall protection. I know there's a few people in here that really want to get something out about shoring fall protection. I've gotten some information. We got fall protection requirements.
Excuse me, Ron, can you move closer to
I'm
the?
sorry. We have fall protection requirements. We go through the different OSHA requirements for fall protection and where you get it. The shoring obviously is not scaffolding, so it's under a different guideline. It's under the masonry portion. And if you're going into ladders, then you gotta, or going into access, the masonry side does not address access, so you have to go to the ladders. So we're covering some of that as far as what's required for fall protection and shoring and forming. We go through the different fall protection systems. Everybody's pretty familiar with most fall protection systems. And then they suggest certain fall protection systems that might not work for different situations. We'll get to that. Different shoring systems. There's some shoring systems that don't go high, don't require fall protection. We'll concentrate on, say, like frame shoring, Shorex, the gas system, any type of shoring that's used to do high shoring. What applicable fall protection systems for the different shoring systems are out there and available. And then again, with the Canadian thing, we don't know what the Canadian standards are for fall protection and if they're different for shoring in Canada than in the US. Yes, sir.
Maybe you can get in touch with the Canadian Council and they can help you with the standards.
Okay, absolutely. All right. So this is an outline that I put together for the fall protection. And basically it goes through what we just discussed, going through different types of fall protection, like guardrails, fall protection anchor, your leading edge method. I don't know how many people are familiar with leading edge from doing forming and shoring or doing platform type jobs. But a leading edge method is where you don't have a guy tied off and you have a monitor for the guy. Thing that does is it takes up 2 people to do it. And if that one guy gets distracted, then you're out of compliance. So I don't think it's used very often, but it is out there as a method. Then you have your Lifeline, rope grab, and lanyards, self-retracting lanyards. When you do have to work on a platform, you'll have to have some kind of fall protection if you're not doing the leading edge method. And normally if you're using a self-retracting lanyard or Lifeline, it has to be the leading edge style. It can't be a regular self-retracting lanyard. So those normally come with a cable and a shock absorber to reduce the loading when you fall over the edge. And then that, in addition to horizontal lifelines, that also has a fall distance you have to be aware of, because your anchor is at your foot. So you're going to fall down an extra 6 feet. So you have to look at the height of your scaffold and see if that's going to, or the height of your platform, and see if that's going to be worth it. Because if you're only 6 feet off the ground, that's not going to be any good. Then you got your horizontal lifelines. Horizontal lifelines have limitations as well. Most of them, if we're talking about shoring and forming, you're talking column distances of 25 to 30 feet. To use a horizontal lifeline and not hit the ground, you almost have to be attached. Your anchors have to be about 21 feet above ground, or else you're going to hit the ground. And that means no extra lanyard on yourself. So if you're actually halfway up and you're attached to a horizontal lifeline that's 10 feet above you, it's not going to stop you from hitting the ground. So we look at the limitations of the different fall protection systems that are available. Then I just go through the different types of shoring systems that are out there. And then I go ahead and say, okay, which ones really need fall protection? Some of them don't get you high off the ground. So we'll knock those out. And then determine the feasibility of using each system. And when they don't work, what do you do? In most cases, we'll tie off to our shoring scaffold, and you have limitations on that as well. If you talk to the manufacturers, they'll have a plan. I have a couple on the Shorex, the high load, the Luma frame, and the gas system. But all of it has specific requirements as far as how you use it, how you attach to the frame, and then how high you can build with a freestanding tower. As far as the base goes, do you need a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 height to base ratio before you can attach? So sometimes if you're going 20, 30 feet high, you're gonna have to lace towers together. All right, here's some examples of documents I've gotten from manufacturers. On the left is the Luma frame. It's 1 page of their instructions. I just threw it up here for an example. You can get these resources from the manufacturers. On the right is a Waco Shorex system. And again, it's just 1 page. And then this is showing the limitations of a horizontal lifeline. If you're at 30 feet, you've got 10 feet of deflection in your lifeline before your, I think your absorber engages and lets you down another 3 feet. And then you got to look at the stretch in your harness and everything else. So you're having to be at about 20 feet off the ground with your anchors to make the horizontal lifeline work. So these are some of the things I'm looking at for the fall protection of shoring. In most cases, we're looking at tying off to your scaffold. It's the easiest way, because in most cases, you're not running with the scaffold, you're climbing up, shoring, putting your U-heads in, and then building the next tower until you're ready to put beams on. So I think that's all I had for this. I am working on it. We need some input from members on additional conditions that I have not covered. Anybody in here have conditions that they want me to cover or that I have not mentioned? I know there are some, but that's okay. We'll talk about it later. I should have said the other way around. I know you all have situations. All right, so new fall protection systems. I may not have brought up all the different types of fall protection systems or not be aware of it. So I'll talk to the Fall Protection Council and see what they've got available. Maybe some anti-gravity suits would be good, but we don't have those yet. Any special projects that members have done, it'd be great to include some of that in our fall protection standard or fall protection guide. And any differences between the Canadian fall protection standards. So I'll check into that with the Canadian Council. Other than that, we don't have anything else we're gonna bring up for presentation today. Do we have any questions on the fall protection? Is there anything else anybody would like us to include in the next or in next committee week or the annual meeting?
You have anything now for a contractor when he walks on site as far as what to be looking for? Pay attention to
I'm sorry.
ground conditions, pay attention to what you're shoring up.
Oh, yeah.
From a shoring perspective, when
I'm
looking at
sorry.
a shoring job?
Exactly, like you walking in on a job, it's,
Yeah, actually, for the shoring design guide draft that we shot out, we have a big list of questions, such as ground conditions. Are there any excavations? What kind of access do they need around the work that's being done? There's all kinds of various things depending on the type of work, whether it's column shoring, truss shoring to look out for. What I'll do is I'll follow up with an email to all you guys of the original draft so you guys can see it. Definitely comment on it, and then we can follow up and see who's actually interested in jumping in and helping out with some of these topics.
Now, since we're here, it's committee week. Are there any other topics that the members would like us to cover other than what we're doing right now? Any ideas for shoring committee? Okay, well, I think the guy's gonna cover most of the situations. All right, then that's all we have for you today. Thank you for coming.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
We'll go ahead and take a short break and come back here at 2 p.m. Eastern for the Construction Hoist Council session.